Today's video is without a doubt the most important one I have ever made. I am confident that the project I'm unveiling today is going to have a real impact on the retro community. Stick around because what I'm about to show you solves a problem this community has lived with for over 25 years. The Slot 1 platform. It's one of my absolute favorites. The 440BX chipset with AGP, PCI and ISA is mostly known for its stability. Some might even say it's the best chipset Intel has ever produced. But there is one issue.
Fast processors for the Slot 1 platform are hard to find.
And that's largely true. The chances of owning a Pentium III in the single-edge contact cartridge format with a 4-digit megahertz number lasered into the plastic body gets slimmer by the day. Intel released faster Coppermines, like this 1100 MHz chip, but that comes with its own set of issues. For one, this chip is rare, and Coppermine hit a frequency wall around 1100 MHz. Second, you need an adapter to make those chips compatible with Slot 1. The famous socket-to-slot adapters, or Slotkets for short. When Intel didn't want to share their base platform with other vendors anymore, like they had with Socket 7, they came up with Slot 1. From then on, Intel controlled the ecosystem through their Pentium II lineup. Unfortunate for Intel, AMD, Cyrix, IDT and Ryze technology kept using the Socket 7 platform, evolved it to support cutting-edge features like AGP and a 100 MHz frontside bus, and caused some serious competition in the budget segment. Intel tried to counter this with the Tualeron, a cut-down Pentium II with no level 2 cache. The backlash was so great due to poor performance that Intel quickly released an updated version with 128 KB of level 2 cache. The famous Tualeron 300A was born, and could be overclocked to 450 MHz if you were lucky. The real benefit of this chip was that the level 2 cache moved inside the die. You no longer saw those big cache chips sitting next to the CPU core, like you did on Pentium II and early Pentium III models. With the L2 cache now inside the die, the cartridge was no longer necessary. But Intel held on to Slot 1 as a platform that would help them break the 1000 MHz barrier, losing to AMD doing the same thing on their competing Slot A platform by just a few days. Fun fact, the Athlon uses the exact same plastic connector, just rotated 180 degrees. Needless to say, AMD and Intel were electrically incompatible from that point forward. AMD heavily pushed Slot A and SuperSocket 7, covering budget, high-end, and everything in between. Intel, on the other hand, was stuck on Slot 1 and needed an alternative. And that's how Socket 370 was born. The new Tualeron chips, with their integrated level 2 cache, fit nicely into a socket again, reducing production cost. But it left everyone who already bought into the Slot 1 platform stranded. Witness the creation of Slotkets. It's an adapter card that lets you run Mendocino Tualerons in Socket 370 PPGA packaging, or plastic pin grid array, in Slot 1 motherboards. Suddenly, you could upgrade your aging Pentium II 233 with a brand new Mendocino 533. Intel continued to make Coppermine chips for Slot 1, but also sold them as Coppermine Tualerons for Socket 370, with reduced level 2 cache of course. When the full Coppermine core landed on Socket 370 with a full 256 KB of level 2 cache, it made sense for motherboard makers to shift from the 440LX chipset up to the top tier 440BX chipset. Their Socket 370 motherboards no longer had to be the budget option. And naturally, the Slotkets got updated too, to support the new Coppermine chips. Today, you can find Slotkets in all kinds of variations, and sometimes it's genuinely hard to tell if a given one is Coppermine compatible. Remember the Slotket we just talked about? The fix that made Socket 370 chips work in Slot 1? That exact foundation is about to break down completely. For Intel, the Pentium III era was supposed to close with the Pentium IV, released at the end of the year 2000. But as many of us know, the P4 rollout was anything but smooth. high power draw,
low power,
extreme heat, and poor performance per watt kept Intel awake at night. So it's no surprise that Intel was quietly betting on another horse at the same time, the Tualatin. It was fast, it ran cold, and it was unmatched in performance per watt compared to the new Pentium IV. Intel was worried that this chip could cannibalize Pentium IV sales. But strategically, releasing it still made sense. First, the mobile market simply couldn't deal with a hot-headed Pentium IV. Second, Intel used the Tualatin to test their new 130nm process node, which the Pentium IV itself wouldn't get until early 2002. Because Socket 370 and Slot 1 were both clearly on their way out, only a handful of companies ever released Slotkets that could deal with a Tualatin chip on a Slot 1 board. But it's not for the lack of trying on the community's part. Since Tualatin-compatible adapters are extremely rare and extremely expensive, tinkerers have modified and altered existing Slotkets ever since.
Looks nice. But what to do now?
Just to make a Tualatin fit onto our beloved Slot 1 motherboards. Unfortunately, those mods aren't trivial. To make a Tualatin work on a Slot 1 board, you have to remove or isolate pins on the socket of your Slotket. Some drill holes into the PCBs because
Nope.
well, I guess they couldn't be bothered to remove the socket cover and remove the pin inside, which, depending on the type of plastic socket, might be impossible to do. Others simply snip the golden pins straight off the CPU. Interposers exist, but they still require you to remove pins and solder others together. Additionally, the extra PCB adds height to the CPU stack, which makes mounting a cooler harder and could lead to broken retention clips on the plastic sockets. And if you go to the extreme length of modifying an adapter that's fully compatible to 3 generations, from Mendocino all the way to Tualatin, you end up with a complex net of wires. I think we can all agree none of these mods are really feasible for someone who just wants to experience running a Tualatin on their Slot 1 motherboard. Today, we are taking the first steps into a brighter future. Away from unknown Slotket features, pricey Tualatin-compatible models, and mods that feel like you need a socket science degree to pull off. Yeah, so here it is. the Hawk 370 Tualatin. It was a lot of work getting this together, and unfortunately I'm not yet 100% done. That's why it isn't available yet. Here is one of my current prototypes, and you can see that I'm still figuring things out. And here at the back, so there are still a few things that need to be ironed out, but this actually is a final validated adapter. This one seems to be working very well. I'll get one more prototype, and I'm sending out a few prototypes to some of my Patreons who are kind enough to test this adapter, that you don't have to just rely on what I'm saying. So then the next thing, well, does it support VIA, the C3 processor from VIA? And well, let's try this and see it for ourselves. But before we power this up, let me thank PCBWay, because obviously without them it wouldn't be possible. And you have seen that this adapter can go up to 150 megahertz frontside bus. If you don't have a well-fabricated PCB, this is not going to work. So you can see all these traces that are going everywhere. You have seen in the video that there are so many traces, specifically here at the bottom where the edge connector from the slot 1 socket goes into and distributes everything across all these pins. This is quite difficult to achieve, and that is why I'm very happy to have PCBWay on my side, getting these projects done. Of course, fabricating 4-layer PCBs for high-performance desktop CPUs is not the only thing PCBWay has to offer. They're also specialized in 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, and injection molding. And of course, if you have PCBs to manufacture, head over to the online ordering portal, upload your Gerber files, pick a few parameters like color, thickness, and finishing, and within no time, you have the package ready at your doorstep. So head over to PCBWay and check out their services. Links are in the video description. And now let's talk a little bit more about the Hawk 370. And of course, our VIA C3 1200 is working as well. Most of you probably know that these VIA chips aren't really the high performers. If you want to get an equivalent Intel chip, you have to divide the frequency by 2. It will give us a 600 megahertz Pentium III that is about as fast as this in integer calculations. And for FPU, it gets even worse. Divide this frequency by 4, that will give us around a 300 megahertz Pentium II. So this chip is about as fast as a Pentium II 300 in floating point and about a 600 megahertz Pentium III in integer calculation. This is how these VIA chips perform, but they're still interesting, and I will cover this in future videos. And of course, I'm really interested, what's your take on this project, on the Hawk 370? I started this project over a year ago. So today is March 1st, 2025. I recorded this before moving actually, so then everything got delayed and I didn't work on this project for maybe 8 months, but then I really got into it and designed the entire thing. It wasn't easy. And it's not for the lack of having Slotkets available. I have plenty, but the problem is that most of them do not adhere to the Intel specification for those processors. And none of them, at least the ones that I have here, support Tualatin. So I had to go through Intel's specification, through Celeron, through Coppermine, through Tualatin, and the 440BX AGP set PGA370 board design guide. Wow. Yes. So yeah, it was challenging. And obviously along the way, I found a few inconsistencies and problems sometimes even for people who are modifying their existing adapters. For instance, the Mendocino requires a specific signal that is just tied to the core voltage of the CPU through a 51 ohm resistor. And on Tualatins, this pin became VTT. It's a termination voltage, doesn't matter, but it's a very important voltage rail. And what you're doing if you're modifying your adapter and you don't cut this trace or remove the resistor, you're connecting VCore to VTT, which is most likely around 1.5 volts. So VTT is 1.5 volts. VCore is whatever you set it to. So if you're overclocking your Tualatin, it could be 1.65 volts or even 1.7 volts that you're connecting to VTT, which is 1.5 volts on the 440BX platform. platform. But obviously, all of these things are fixed on the Hawk 370. I believe this is the only adapter out there you should use to run Tualatins. And you have seen people went to extreme length trying to modify their existing ones. You can still do it. I mean, I'm not here to tell you not to. I'm just saying for people that are not willing to, cutting off pins from CPUs, drilling holes into their PCBs, or solder wires at the back of their adapters, just remember that the Hawk 370 is a project that will soon be available.
Shut up and take my money!
And now you can let me know in the comments if you would be interested to get 1, 2, or even more of these adapters, because I'm planning on using PCBWay as a fabricator and distributor of these adapters. But also I want to know from you what you want me to test with this. I'm trying to get a dual slot motherboard that I can modify up to 133 MHz because I want to see if this adapter works also in dual CPU setup at 133 MHz or even more. So there will definitely be some motherboard modification videos coming in the future, but I also want to test Tualatin versus Coppermine and maybe even some Pentium IV systems against a 440BX motherboard on steroids using the Hawk 370 and maybe a Celeron 1.6 GHz, or maybe even one of the server chips that goes up to 1575 at 150 MHz frontside bus. That was ridiculous when I saw that. And then from September onwards, there will be Tualatin content and what the Slot 1 platform with a 440BX chipset can do with faster CPUs. Which also, Phil, sorry, I have to correct you, from now on, there will be fast processors available again. So now, of course, is the time to head over to eBay or to your local classifieds website, scoop up these Tualatin Celerons 1200. Most of them overclock nicely. Not every one of them will reach 1.6 GHz. I have 8 1200 MHz Celerons and 5 of them could reach 1.6 GHz. 3 of them at the stock voltage of 1.5 volts. And 2 of them I had to increase the voltage to 1.6 volts. The other ones didn't make it past 1.4 or 1.5 gigahertz, regardless of what voltage I set. It's still a silicon lottery game, but yeah, you might get lucky. A Tualatin Celeron 1200 is still faster than any other Coppermine out there. And the great benefit you get from them is that they run at a frontside bus of 100 MHz. So you can virtually run any HEP graphics card in your 440BX chipset and enjoy the fast frequency of your CPU. How cool is that? Okay, now one last thing. If you have any great idea that you would love to add to this adapter, let me know. I may consider adding it, but another one is, and I have to show you this on a rendering because this is something new, there is a tiny pad for the ThrottleBlaster. I want to bring this to your attention. This is a project from Scrap Computing. This project allows you to slow down your processor if you're playing DOS games that are speed sensitive, which is a great way to control the speed using hardware. No need to go into the BIOS and enabling, disabling the cache or using some software to change the multipliers and so on. So yeah, this is one feature one of my Patreons suggested, and of course I added a small pad, why not? Now I want to thank all my Patreons for their patience because they know this since quite some time. And yeah, I'm sending out these packages now. If you want to become a Patreon and support the things that I'm trying to do here, head over to Patreon, buy me a coffee, or become a member here on YouTube, because without the support from you and PCBWay, I wouldn't be able to do this. And this is it for today, but it won't be the last time you see the Hawk 370. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next upcoming videos. Take care and bye-bye.